Ladies, we heard a little bit about how to fix the future, and we have a few new ideas about how to learn about that. Our next speaker is going to talk about the future of audio. What is it going to sound like? And we are about to get started here in just 1 second with a short video about the future of audio.
I'm obsessed. I want to get where I have never been before, as close and intimate as possible.
Can I capture this true moment?
That feeling of really being there with the music in the moment. This is the first time I can hear it so intimately. There is so much space. I feel like the singer is sitting on my shoulder.
I spend hour after hour in the studio to improve these tiny details. Maybe only a few people will hear it. But if someone is listening, I want to make sure that it's there. I prod.
I push.
I put together.
I pull apart.
I redesign.
I redefine.
No sound should be lost.
Nothing should be merely good enough. I want to go further.
Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Sennheiser on the future of audio.
A sound that can travel right through your body from one point to the next.
Just
Sound and space become one, surrounding me, making me complete.
Take me to another sphere.
Now, here we go. Daniel Sennheiser on the future of audio. Here you go. Thank you.
So one thing we already learned is the future is always late, right? Or later than we think. Okay, and the other thing we learned, because I must say I disagree quite a bit with what we've just heard. The other thing that we learned from that is there's always an analog backup. I love digitalization. I love the digital future, but I have my analog backup because they forgot the timer here. So I'm trying to be on time. I'm going to talk to you about the future of audio, and we've heard a lot about the future as a big idea from Andrew. I think it becomes more tangible if we talk about the future in a more specific form. And there's a lot of very smart people that can talk about the future very specifically. I can only talk about audio, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So the future of audio, very specifically, what is it? What drives the future of audio? Is creating experiences that are more tangible, that are more meaningful to us. And I think here I do agree with Andrew, is we need to have a purpose. We need to know what the future is for, not technology or digitalization, difficult word, right? By itself, but the future for a purpose. For Sennheiser, it starts with science. And science is a place where a lot of theoretical ideas come to mind. It has to start with that. Because first we need to understand what we do. You cannot imagine the future without understanding deeply the subject of what you're trying to revolutionize, trying to change. And here, my grandfather started in 1945 to be an entrepreneur, not necessarily because he wanted to be an entrepreneur, but because of the necessity of the times. He started as a scientist. He was leading a lab at the university. And I guess some of you are in such a situation as well. Then came the big crisis of the Second World War. And the big crisis created an entrepreneur. Not only in his cases, there are a lot of other examples as well. But the crisis of a war, and we hope we don't need to go that close, but the crisis creates new opportunities. And here, I think what we've just heard, the crisis of our times right now, is also fertile ground for entrepreneurs to start, for people to come up with new ideas and take what they know, because you need to start really with what you know very deeply, intense science. We started in 1945 with 7 engineers who needed something to eat, and they took apart their lab equipment that they had at the university because they had nothing else, put it together in a different form to create products that they were able to sell to nurture their young family. It's as simple as that. And so Sennheiser at the time was a startup. Today we call that a startup. At the time we didn't call it a startup. It was pure survival. And in a lot of cases there is the garage, the famous garage where it all started. In our case it's this farmhouse. So in the lower part the lab was being created, and upstairs my father, who at the time was only 1 year old, was being fed by my grandmother. So it was pure survival how the company initially started. But this idea of understanding deeply what the subject of audio is about, because that's what they understood very well, has stayed with Sennheiser for all the time. Today, we try to be a startup with 70 years of history, because startups are great, but they're chaotic and they lack trust, and it's a high risk. For you, those of you who are investing into startups, you know very well that a lot of it fails and only very few go through it. So a company like Sennheiser is able to produce products that are innovative, hopefully like a startup, challenging new ideas, but with the trust of a 70-year-old company. And if you're on stage like me right now, you want to rely on a sound link that is 100% proof and that works every time. So creating this idea of a startup needs new ways of working together. So today, it doesn't only come out of the engineer anymore. We need to have multifunctional teams, and that's why we need different spaces to work together as well. Here you see our innovation campus that we built next to the farmhouse. The farmhouse still exists, but is more kind of a museum place today. And in this innovation campus, we put interdisciplinary teams together, because today's problems cannot be solved by engineers only, cannot be solved by programmers only, but it requires everybody. It requires designers, it requires marketeers, finance people, people who understand the customer. And yes, very often we include the customer in our problem solving as well. So just a couple of revolutionary ideas that Sennheiser came up through its history, because the future of audio is not something that we see in the future. Yes, as well in the future, but the future of audio is also something which we have proven for the last 70 years. The future of audio has been built by, like in this case, the HD25. It's the standard headphone that every DJ uses. And there's an awful lot of trial and error in that. It was never designed to be a DJ headset, because at the time DJs didn't exist. It was designed for an Agra recording device. Then went to the in-flight entertainment of the Concorde, and from there went to the DJs, but that's a totally different story. You see, for example, here as well, a very small product. It's actually not a small product, but it's small on the picture here. It's the interference tube microphone, being able to directionally capture sound. This was a revolution at the time, because before then, for the creativity of the movie industry, you were quite limited. You had either shots of big landscape, large pane, or you had a close-up with dialogue. but you couldn't have both because the microphone would be in the way. With this now, it enabled the movie industry to actually have a dialogue and have a wide shot at the same time. So something very simple if you think about it, but if you think about old movies, you either see a large shot or you see a dialogue. You can't have both. And this gave us an Oscar in the end. So a lot of innovation, like also the famous Orpheus, the best headphone in the world in 1992, just launched another one, HE1, which obviously you can hear when you get to see one, because it's a very specific product. I'm going to talk about one revolution which I don't claim that Sennheiser invented, but I would say that Sennheiser made it ubiquitous. It's going from mono to stereo. Because in 1968, we came up with the idea of an audio headphone. Something everybody has in their pocket today, I would say. But it didn't exist before 1968. Headphones did exist as a concept, but it was used like a telephone for speech. No music was transmitted with it. And by accident, an engineer played around with transducers from a microphone, put them to his ears, and realized that you can get very nice stereo sound with it. And our first market research, today we call it market research, but basically what my grandfather did, he asked the distributors at the time, how many of these can you sell in the world per year? The first estimation was 500 pieces of headphones per year worldwide. Today we know that the headphone market is a multi-billion market. And at the time we had 100% market share. But we actively shared the patent with others. We licensed the patent because we said, this is so big, we can't do it all on our own. We wanted others, competitors, to use that patent and to create a market because it needs to be spread around the world. So a big idea also needs sharing, because we realized at the time content is king. Without stereo content, nothing would happen. Without stereo recordings. And in 1969, I think it was, when the Beatles recorded Sgt. Pepper's at Abbey Road, they still recorded it mono. I think this year they released the stereo version, which is kind of a funny story. So from there, technologically, quite quickly, to go to a leap to a binaural recording device was not so difficult, because here you see the KEM 2002 from the 70s, and the KU100 on the right side, which is today's binaural recording device. What it does, it records the way you hear, because we realize you can have 10,000 speakers around yourself. In the end, you only have 2 ears. So it needs to go somewhere in your ears. And we perceive spatial sound. So how does that work with just 2 channels? Well, the trick is to use basically the geometry of our head and our ears. We call that head-related transfer functions, technically speaking. But what it is it simulates basically what you hear when you hear spatially. And spatial hearing is very, very important. I'm going to come to that in a second. So putting all of that science into product is what creates ultimately really big sound. We heard earlier that Sennheiser is really focused on science, but not for science sake. We're not a research company. We're a company that applies that science to create more intense sound. And here, that's really what creates something where you and me can have the representation of reality. Reality cannot be just explained by science. Reality can be explained by something which touches you and me, especially with sound. So if we create this more intense sound experiences, that's what we call ambio. We heard change from mono to stereo, and that took a long time. And now we go from stereo to ambio. An MBO is not a format. It's not a way of representing or a format of representing reality. MBO is about capturing, it's about mixing, it's about processing and also displaying or listening to sound. So the whole chain needs to be considered. You cannot record in stereo and then play back in MBO. Yes, there are some algorithms that can make an approximation of that, but ideally you already record three-dimensionally and then you process it, you mix it, and you display it in 3D. So what is really 3D? 3D is going away from a channel-based logic to an object-based logic, because all other ways of recording today is you're always recording channels. You're making an approximation of reality. With MBO, we're able to recreate the sound field with the objects at a certain distance. You need metadata for that, of course. Or you can already record the whole sound field and place some spot mics in there. Where surround used to be big word, but basically surround did nothing else but enhance stereo image. It creates something around yourself. It does not immerse you. It does not give you the opportunity to correctly locate sound sources with a distance, with height, and with the reverberation of the room. So fields of application of MBO are very many, of course. You have this cinematic virtual reality, and here spatial hearing is extremely important. Imagine a video, a 3D video, and yet there are actually quite a lot of 3D videos already out. Pretty interesting videos also on Facebook and YouTube and so on, so you can look at these. The main problem with those is, where's the action? Where is it happening? If I'm looking in this direction and over here something is happening, I don't see it. And if I don't have a correct spatial representation, I miss the action. I miss what actually the director of that film is trying to show. You cannot go with the normal cut, and today in a movie, the director decides what you look at. In a virtual reality cinema setup, you need to decide where you look at. And that's how our brain works. Well, we first hear something and then we look somewhere. So our eyes are analyzing, are understanding, our ears are feeling. You can close your eyes, but you can't close your ear. Very interesting distinction here. It's important to be able to direct your attention with good spatial sound. Of course, it's interesting for 3D live recording, and here I'm going to come to it in a second. We have a very interesting new initiative with Moods here in Zurich. You can experience that on Friday. Come back on that. Live sports broadcast, of course. Where's the action? Today, very often, the 3D games, my son is playing 3D soccer, and actually the audio of that game is better than most TV representation, because the audio is created by the gaming engine, and the audio is not captured in 3D during the game. So a live game is giving you less emotions than a 3D game here. 3D audio listening, of course, so you want to listen to it ideally over headphones, but also over speakers. 3D gaming, I think, doesn't need to be explained. Games are already advanced over reality when it comes to sound very often. Acoustic modeling, and especially important it becomes when we go to augmented reality, because there you need to blend reality and the virtual world also on the audio side, because otherwise, if you're entering a room, our eyes adapt to the size of the room, our ears as well. If you have no reflection of the room suddenly, it feels really awkward. And you need to do that experience once in order to understand it. So a couple of Products that we already launched in the field of Ambio is the VR mic. It's basically a approximation of 3D. It's recording the full sound field and gives you the opportunity to create 3D audio from that, but it still needs mixing, it still needs treatment. It's a professional recording device. It's already been defined as the standard for Facebook's VR productions, for example, and it's been introduced in a lot of new VR productions around the world. It's been co-developed together actually with content providers, because we realized 3D audio is not something that Sennheiser invented, it's something that's been researched and around for a while. The key to 3D audio, like with going from mono to stereo, is that the content is there. Content needs to be created in a meaningful workflow. So we created a couple of prototypes, shared it with content producers and the community, and then came forward with this product. Going from a professional device to a consumer device, because Sennheiser has always been really interested on the consumer side as well. If we want to change the world, we cannot just influence the professionals. We need to touch each and every one here in the room. So we created a recording device that is using actually your head as the dummy head, as we call it. So you're putting this headset into your ears, and it has microphones at the position of your ears. So you can listen to music, you can listen to the world, but you can record the world as you're hearing it at the same time. It creates a 3D image of reality. And for me, this is really as revolutionary as going to GoPro at the time for video, because it created a professional video device that everybody could use as a consumer device. This Ambio Smart headset is creating that opportunity. You just plug it into your smartphone and you have 3D audio with the great video that you have. Especially when you're recording noisy environments, this is interesting because with your smartphone, you're not able to distinguish between what is reverberation, what is noise, the cocktail party effect. You're not able to move and zoom into listen to somebody speaking next. But with this headset, you can record it and actually listen to the 3D audio world, and will create much more content, YouTube content, with that. We have a little stand outside, and we're giving away 3 prototypes. It's still not launched, so it's a prototype. Later on, you can go out, try it on for yourself. You can fill out a form, and we're giving away today at 2 o'clock, I think, 3 prototypes that you can use, that you can share, and we encourage you to upload your experiences on YouTube, of course. And on Friday, there's the first Ambio binaural live stream from Moods, the jazz club, where we actually use professional gear to give you a 3D live stream. And we encourage the 3 guys or girls who receive this prototype to also come to Moods. You get a free entrance there and create a bootleg, film it yourself, and share that with the world. So this is really something to try later. But we also need to think about the way of creating content. It's not only about devices anymore. It's also about workflow. And therefore, we created some blueprints. How do you record for binaural? How do you record for loudspeaker playback? And how do you record for virtual reality? So here, if those of you who are more interested, go to our website. It's all explained how to do it. It's a starting point. We don't claim that we know everything here, but it's a starting point to get you going and create afterwards then your own way of creating virtual reality or binaural recording. So in a nutshell, we don't know how quickly 3D audio will be adopted. We have the feeling that right now is the right time, because binaural recording devices have been around for 40 years. But suddenly there's a lot of interest in binaural audio because of virtual reality, because of augmented reality, but also because people are more interested in more meaningful audio experiences. So, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is to create more intense emotion. That's what audio is all about. The audio goes right into your brain. As I said before, you can't close your ears. You cannot switch off audio. And that has a very intimate connection to your emotional side. Make a little experiment. Switch off when you're watching a horror movie at home. I know you don't do that very often, but when you do, switch off the audio and just look at the video, at the image. It is a very strange experience. Maybe it's gross, maybe it's, yeah, but that doesn't touch you emotionally. Switch back on the audio. It's really scary. You can actually even switch on or look away the video, but you still have the audio. It's really scary. So it goes really in your emotional side. We've tried that in a couple of occasions and seen the result. For example, we did with Robin Schulz, we did a 3D Ambio party, and he mixed actually several songs specifically for 3D audio with Ambio. It gives them new freedom, and DJs here are more experimental because they're producing their experience as they go anyway. But here, really interesting to see how intense the audio experience is. There is also on YouTube I think on YouTube or Facebook, I don't know exactly, one of the two. There's a 3D recording of this party, and you can actually move around. The audio is real 3D, but also the video is real 3D if you're interested. But also one of the pioneers of audio, Pink Floyd, who has been working with Sennheiser for more than 50 years, they've always been interested in 3D audio. They actually experimented with quadraphonic sound representation. They experimented with binaural already in the 70s, while the Beatles were still recording in mono. So at the same time, they were recording already in binaural. At the time, the playback devices were not up to the level that they were able to display that. And they were not able to really cut it on vinyl. Today, with digital formats, that's no problem anymore. So for their big exhibition, which is just happening right now in London, we recreated from source material a couple of songs in Ambio. And this was really interesting to understand, to work together with our specialists, with people like Simon Franklin, who created the audio experience for Avatar and Spectre and movies like that. They worked together with Pink Floyd and Andy Jackson, their sound engineer, to really create something which is Pink Floyd and 3D at the same time. Because you can't just take legacy material and create a couple of 3D effects and then it is right. A band like Pink Floyd would not accept that. So I encourage you to go there. You can listen to a big concert this size, more or less, here in 3D, and it's one of the most emotional experiences that I've had next to a live concert. Very, very close to a live concert. Yeah, go to Moods. You can hear it there as well on Friday. James Taylor Quartet is going to play. We're going to record that live and stream it live. So even if you don't go to Moods, you'll be able to hear a binaural stream from Moods. And over the next season, it's going to be, I think, 30, 40 concerts that we do together with Moods as an experiment. In 3D audio, you actually see our dummy head here on stage. But also you see spot microphones. So the classical mixing doesn't go away. You still need to balance the different levels of the different instruments, but you need to record also the ambience, which is creating a really nice 3D atmosphere. So Friday, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be really excited. In order to experiment with these new opportunities, we've partnered also with Zürcher Hochschule der Künste here, which I think is an interesting combination, because art very often artists are not so much bound by the reality of creating a commercial product. So they're the first to take on new opportunities. And here's one of the projects called Proximal Visit. It's recorded with our VR mic, so not the headset that I talked about, with a VR mic and 3D cameras. And it's an art project where you're able to really immerse yourself in this case, Hong Kong, to experiment with what artistic opportunities 3D audio gives to you. So I encourage you to go outside, sign up for the Ambio Smart Headset, or ASH we call it, and try it for yourself, because hearing is believing in this. So in a nutshell, what we do at Sennheiser, and here I do agree with Andrew, we need to have a purpose. You can't just have innovation for innovation's sake. Our purpose, and we do very intense science, we do a lot of science, but the purpose of it is to create more intense sound experiences, higher resolution, 3D audio, to create ultimately a more intense emotional experience. That's what Sennheiser stands for. And the future of audio, if it creates a more emotional experience for all of us, we believe, I'm an optimist in that case. I believe if we're connected to our emotions, we're going to be more human, and we're going to create a better place. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you for that lovely presentation. I definitely agree with you on the emotional side of things. I mean, even your intro video, sorry for jumping the gun there, but it creates a sense of, it produces that tension.
Yeah.
And actually, the horror movie example that you mentioned, I know that feeling because I got a phone call and I muted it and it came back and you were watching a Stephen King film and it wasn't that scary. It was just an awkward experience. It's like, that dun-dun, dun-dun. You need to have that to really build up that whole experience. And I'm very curious to see what is going to happen in the 3D space in VR and the different things like that. Thank you very much. I'd like to open up the round to questions. Yep, in the back here. I'm going to throw, honestly, I think we learned earlier that this is a bad idea. So sorry about that. I'm going to just walk that out here.
Thanks for not hitting me.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So as I understand, you're a product designer by profession, and you also have a technology or engineering. So from your point of view, which factor is the main driver for the development? Is the technology driving the way, and then all the designers and figuring out what to do with it, or is it rather the other way around?
There is no yes or no answer to that. So I think the old way of linear development is over. The problems of today are much more complex, and you need, as I said before, you need a interdependent team of multidisciplinary person, and for that you need to understand. You need to have empathy for the customer first, empathy for the customer problem. And I think here design training is helpful, but it's not the only way to do that. Everybody can do that. An engineer can be empathetic. But all of these people look at the customer problem through their lens, a designer through a designer's lens, an engineer through an engineer's lens, a finance person through a finance lens, because ultimately we're also a commercial company that needs to have the funds to invest into technology. I think we need to develop all those streams at the same time. It needs to be continuous advancement on the technological side, on the science side, but also on the customer understanding, customer journey, design, usability side, as well as the marketing. How do we explain something like the ASH, the Ambio Smart Headset? How do we explain that to customers? It looks like a headset, but it's something completely different. So it needs also a lot of skills on the marketing and sales side in order for this product to find its customer. And it needs somebody who understands the magnitude of that change. So I'm not saying that it's the designers in the lead, or engineers are in the lead, or finance people are in the lead. That's not a good idea. But I think everybody needs to contribute in their world. And sometimes the spark comes from the engineer. Sometimes the spark comes from the designer. Sometimes the spark comes from a salesperson who says, hey, I've seen this problem. My customer has made a fix, so let's try and make a product out of that. A lot of great ideas come in that relationship with the customer and therefore through sales.
Thank you. I guess that's a team effort. Do we have any other questions? We have time for about 2 more. Who's currently working on a cool product that they would like to ask a couple of questions about? Maybe in the audio sphere? Oh, yep.
Oh, yeah. So thank you very much for your presentation. How important do you see location of the head in terms of binaural recording? Let's say especially in mobile apps, for example, where you don't want to have a mobile phone in pocket. Still want to have you have it in the pocket, but you don't know the exact orientation of the person. Would this be integrated somehow in the headset as well, so that if you orient the head, the sound changes?
Absolutely. So you need to create a tracker in the headset as well. We have that working very well in our labs. So far, it's not a consumer product yet, but I think that's going to be the future. It creates other problems because when you're, for example, you're moving in space, you're listening to something in 3D, then the audio image should remain stable. So your head movement should also not move the audio experience. But what happens if you're walking down the street and you turn around? Now, suddenly everything you're listening, so it needs to, at some place it needs to follow you, but in some cases it needs not to follow you. So I think it's easier in the area of virtual and augmented reality, because there we have the universe being defined. It's more difficult if you're just listening to 3D audio and not having any awareness of your surrounding. Technologically, it's no problem. It's more the application that is missing.
Full immersion versus actually still being in the real world to a certain level, like walking across the street with the headsets in and the truck coming up quickly, right?
But that's where I think augmented reality is going to be interesting, because there you can see the world, you can see virtual objects in the world, and obviously you need to have very precise location of the audio source of those virtual objects as well. So you need to be able to analyze the audio experience or the audio awareness of the space that you're in, but also the location of and the reflection of the virtual world.
We saw a lot of that with the Apple Keynote yesterday, actually, on the iPhone X and the iPhone 8 as well with ARKit. Perfect, thank you. We have time for one more question in the audience here. Oh, perfect, the hand up. Perfect. Please go ahead.
Are there projects for blind persons, kind of audio orientation system?
I said a question. Okay. So I thought you had a project. Sorry.
Oh, no. It was a question for you. If you are doing a project.
Right now, no. But maybe in the future. It sounds like a interesting idea. I think blind people are very well able to listen to, or we know that they're very well able to listen to reflections of the rooms, things that, or the space, things that we usually don't listen to too much. You can train yourself to listen to that as well. So a blind person very quickly has a good feeling of whether they're outside, inside, how big a room is, where a wall is, because they hear the reflection there. But for that, you need to be really, really, really precise. So I think first of all, to get it right for augmented reality will be already a big step for all of us.
Well, it could be in the future, right? The future of audio. We might be back here in 10 years, and that might be a more immersive film experience for the visually impaired.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's it for the questions. Daniel, thank you very much. A big round of applause.
Thank you.
Big round of applause. Thank you very much. And one more thing we have for you before you go, just one last thing. So obviously for Friday's concert, we got you a stylish bag, but also
Thank you very much.
we thought, you know, some live audio is also good. So we got you tickets to the open house here in Zurich
Oh,
as well.
very
So
good.
thank you very much for being out here. Thank you. Another round of applause. Folks,